Want to know how to bunny hop effectively? Or how about using bunny hops to get max movement speed from a standing position within one quick movement? Or what if you want to engage enemies while still moving quickly? Well, I'll be covering this all and explaining exactly how you can put the bunny hop to good use in every situation. But first, let me explain how bunny hops work and how you can do it too. So there are plenty of BHOP guides for Apex Legends out there already, but I don't think anybody quite understands the mechanic fully yet. I feel like this video will offer the most in-depth explanation on how it all works and the most effective way to BHOP that nobody is talking about. If you want to jump to each tip, I've put timestamps in the description. So firstly, let's talk about movement speed in Apex Legends. When you run with no weapons equipped, you have a velocity of 299. If you slide on flat ground, your velocity reaches a maximum of about 435, but it slowly drops to 0. If you slide on a hill, you can go over 600 in some cases. So if you just want to move quickly, the best tip is to run, then slide for 1 second, then run for 2 seconds, then repeat. This way you get the maximum speed bonus from the slide. B-hopping will never be faster than this, at least not consistently. However, when you equip a weapon, your velocity goes to 260. At this point, B-hopping can actually be a faster way to move. Not only that, but it makes you a very tricky target to hit. So what does that mean? Well, you can B-hop pretty much anywhere, and with some practice, it can be a useful movement tool whilst fighting. And of course, the most useful tool for B-hopping is still to use it whilst using med items, or aiming down sight when charging up the Peacekeeper precision choke shot. So how do you actually B-hop? Well, a commonly talked about method is like this. You run, slide, then start jumping after the slide. Pay attention to my button presses here. As soon as I'm in the slide, I keep the slide button held down. Then I let go of the forward key. Apex Legends now thinks I'm in a sliding state, so that would mean that any momentum I have is held and I will continue to move in whichever direction I am looking. So this then allows me to jump each time I hit the floor to stop the slide from ending. This kind of prolongs the slide from ending, but eventually the momentum will be lost. At that point the game goes, hey, you're not in a slide anymore, you need to press forward to build more momentum. But this is where strafing comes into play. When you turn in the air in Apex Legends, you actually build momentum. In fact, the momentum you build is quite high. This allows you to build enough momentum to keep the slide going. A larger swinging turn will build more momentum, which means you can keep the bunny hop going for longer. Each time you land though, you lose some of that momentum, so you must repeatedly strafe through the air to keep a consistent momentum. It's very hard to build more momentum than you lose, but it's often quite easy to at least keep that momentum. This effectively allows you to bunny hop forever. Okay, so practice with me. Jump into the training area, then get to full running speed, slide, then start jumping whilst holding crouch. Make sure to let go of the forward key. I use the mouse wheel because it has more responsive presses, but a spacebar will work. You will prolong that slide status just a little bit, but with each jump, your speed will reduce until it comes to a halt. Alright, now to move on to B-hopping with strafing in Apex Legends. So, repeat the same movement as above, but then, when you are jumping, do a clean, sweeping motion from left, then to right, from left, then to right. As you do this, you must hold the corresponding keys for that movement. So, if you move your mouse right, hold down the D key. It's quite easy to get the hang of, and much easier than B-hopping in something like Counter-Strike. Now, with some practice, you can continue this forever. I found that it's best to do about 4 jumps going in one direction before alternating for longer hops. I also find that you can start a good B-hop by running against the direction you want to hop, then slide and turn into it on your first jump. If you are just trying to travel a smaller distance, 2 or 3 jumps before switching sides is better, because it allows you to move in a more specific direction. It's also best to do this in a place that's wide and in the open. In tight spaces, you'll lose momentum and won't be able to continue. Also, you can't B-hop up hills. it makes more sense to just slide down hills. B-hopping downhill will give you a lot of momentum, but a lot of velocity is transferred into moving directly downward as the simulated gravity pushes you back to the ground. If you are B-hopping and come near a slope, you can stop the jumping, go straight into the slide, then transition straight into a hop once the slide is gone. This can be a great way to build up even more momentum to keep the B-hop going in case you mess up some strafing. Okay, so now what if I told you that you don't need to do all of that running and sliding to get into a B-hop? What if you could just go from a standing position into a slide? And this slide can get you moving faster than holding a weapon while sprinting can. Well, you can. And it's quite easy. Just look away from the direction you want to travel in, then jump whilst turning toward the direction. Now crouch whilst turning too. Because you crouch, it will take longer for you to hit the ground, and this air turn is actually enough to build up the speed needed to start a full-blown B-hop. A 90 degrees turn is enough for a good B-hop, but 180 degrees will get you more initial momentum too. Want even more speed? Climb up onto a wall or higher platform, then as you fall, strafe into a longer, wider arcing turn, and you'll build even more momentum. In this case, you can sometimes even go faster than sprinting, but it's very short-lived. So how can you use B-hopping effectively? Well, here's the most useful method, using it when healing. Let's say you need to heal in the middle of a fight or when running from the zone. The normal movement speed when healing is painfully slow. It can also be used when aiming down the Peacekeeper or triple take to build up the charge with a precision choke whilst you're moving quickly. Or what about just using it in fights to close the gap on enemies? There's been a lot of talk about hitboxes recently, and by bunny hopping, you become even more difficult to hit. Think about it. If somebody is running in a straight line, it's fairly easy to track them, but if they're bouncing left or right, bobbing up and down, it's much harder. Before you know it, they're in your face with a Peacekeeper. Also, if you shoot, you will lose momentum. However, if you shoot to the side or shoot then quickly air strafe after, you'll build enough momentum to continue the bunny hop. What's crazy is that you can use all of these elements together. You could, for example, B-hop into a fight, fire, then B-hop out whilst healing, then B-hop straight back in, all in one fluid motion. This is me showing off some of the movement mechanics, and as you can see, I'm not perfect, but with some practice, imagine how good you could get at Apex Legends by using B-hopping. I'm honestly really excited to see how this will evolve once players start to learn how to use it more effectively. I feel like the skill curve for Apex Legends is only just being realised, and there's a lot of potential for some truly impressive moments in this game on just movement mechanics alone. If you want to see some more basic movement mechanics, I'll put a card on screen now to another video. Alright, that's it. That's my B-hop guide. I hope this has proven to be useful. I think that this is the best way to B-hop in Apex Legends. Although if you've seen somebody with a better method, I'd love to see it. Alright, cheerio.